Triplet girls left a note for Daddy, he's lonely. The nurse brought Christmas to a CEO. The lights twinkled like tiny stars, reflecting off the shiny surfaces of buildings, streets, and cars moving slowly through the evening traffic. It was the holiday season, and the city buzzed with festive cheer, but Jonathan felt completely alone. Despite the wealth he had accumulated over the years, the luxurious office, and the corner office with its breathtaking view, none of it seemed to matter tonight. He leaned back in his leather chair, rubbing his tired eyes and letting out a long, quiet sigh. He had always been a hard-working man. From a young age, he had been determined to succeed. He had spent countless hours studying, climbing the corporate ladder, and building a company that was now recognized worldwide. People admired him, respected him, and some even feared him. But admiration and respect never filled the empty spaces in his heart. Jonathan glanced around his office. The walls were decorated with awards, certificates, and photographs of business events, but there were no family pictures. There was no sign of warmth or laughter that reminded him of home. On his desk sat his phone, blinking with unread messages and missed calls. He knew that most of them were work-related, emails from executives, reminders about meetings, and memos from his assistants. He rarely found personal messages, and even when he did, he often ignored them because he was always busy. Tonight, the silence of his office seemed louder than ever. The hum of the air conditioner and the soft click of the city lights outside were the only sounds. He thought about the little family he had waiting at home, his daughters Emma, Lily, and Sophie. The triplets were only 7 years old, full of energy, laughter, and curiosity. Yet, despite being his children, he barely got to see them. He had missed their birthdays, school plays, and countless bedtime stories because work always came first. Jonathan rubbed his temples. He remembered the mornings when he used to wake up early, get the girls ready for school, and watch them laugh over breakfast. But those mornings were rare. Most of the time, he woke up early enough to quickly check emails, sip a cup of coffee, and rush off to the office. By the time he returned home, the girls were already in bed and the house was quiet. At times, he wondered if they even missed him or if his absence had become normal for them. He sighed again and leaned back in his chair, looking at the skyline. The city seemed alive, full of people celebrating with their families, hanging lights, and preparing for Christmas. Jonathan had never been much for holiday celebrations, but tonight he felt a pang of longing. He wished he could feel that warmth, that connection with someone who truly cared about him, not just for his success, money, or position. The office phone rang, startling him from his thoughts. He picked it up, expecting another business call. It was his assistant, reminding him about a late-night meeting with investors. Jonathan thanked her quietly and hung up, feeling even more tired. He leaned back again, staring at the empty space around him. The truth was he was lonely, deeply, quietly lonely. Jonathan thought about how strange it was that a man could have everything, money, a big house, a successful company, but still feel so empty. He remembered friends from college, colleagues he had met over the years, and the people who had admired him. Many of them were now busy with their own lives, families, and children. They had moved on, and he had focused only on work. Now, he was surrounded by achievements but had almost no personal connections left. He tried to distract himself by reviewing the contracts on his desk, but his mind wandered again. He imagined his daughters running around the house, laughing as they played with their toys, decorating the Christmas tree, and singing little songs he could barely remember. He realized how little he had actually shared with them, and how much he had missed. For years, he had told himself that he was working hard to provide them a better future, but now he wondered if he had forgotten the present, the moments that actually mattered. Jonathan leaned forward, resting his head in his hands. He remembered the stories his own father used to tell him about family, love, and togetherness. His father had often said, Success without love is like a house with no doors or windows. It looks strong from outside, but inside it is empty. Jonathan had always nodded, thinking he understood, but now he truly felt the meaning of those words. His office, his company, and even his luxurious apartment felt like that house, beautiful from the outside, empty inside. He picked up a pen from his desk and idly started scribbling on a piece of paper. At first, it was random notes about work, ideas for meetings and schedules for the next day. But slowly, his thoughts drifted, and he found himself writing something different. I miss them. I miss my girls, I miss family. The words seemed small on the big white page, but they carried the weight of his heart. Time passed unnoticed. Outside, the city lights flickered, and the evening slowly turned into night. Jonathan felt a mixture of regret and hope, a strange combination he had not experienced in a long time. He wanted to change things, but he didn't know where to start. He had spent so many years building walls around himself, thinking that emotions were weaknesses, and now those walls seemed unbreakable. He closed his eyes for a moment, imagining the faces of Emma, Lily, and Sophie. He pictured them running to him with hugs, their laughter filling the empty spaces of his life. He realized that he wanted more than just success. He wanted connection, warmth, and love, the kind that could fill the empty corners of his heart. At that moment, a quiet sound caught his attention. It was his phone again, but this time it wasn't an email alert or a reminder from his assistant. It was a small notification from the home security system. His daughters had just arrived home. Jonathan looked at the time. It was late, much later than he usually saw them. He felt a sudden pang of guilt and longing. He knew that he could not go home yet. Work still demanded his attention. But the thought of them being there, waiting, filled him with a strange mix of hope and sadness. He realized that no amount of money, power, or recognition could replace the simple joy of seeing his children smile, holding their hands, and being part of their lives. Jonathan Blake, the successful, admired CEO, sat alone in his office that night, staring at the city lights and feeling something he had almost forgotten: the deep human need for love, warmth, and family. He didn't yet know how things would change, or how he would bridge the gap that had grown between him and his daughters, but for the first time in years, he felt something stirring inside, a desire to reconnect, to be more than just a name on a company letterhead. And somewhere in his heart, he felt a quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, this holiday season could be different. At home, the evening was a different kind of busy. The house, though quiet in the halls, was full of little bursts of energy in the living room where Emma, Lily, and Sophie were playing together. The three triplets were inseparable, always laughing, talking, and sharing their little world of imagination. Tonight, however, there was a small pause in their usual games. Something had been on their minds all afternoon. They kept glancing toward the stairs, as if waiting for someone to appear. "Do you think Daddy is lonely?" Emma asked, her big brown eyes full of curiosity. "Sometimes," Sophie replied softly. "He's always busy at work, and when we call him, he doesn't talk much." Lily, the most thoughtful of the three, nodded. "I think he misses us too. Maybe he doesn't know how to say it." The girls sat together on the living room carpet, surrounded by scattered toys and half-finished crafts. Their little minds were turning over a serious thought, one that had come after noticing how quiet their father had been lately. Though he was a busy man, they sometimes caught him staring out the window at the city at night, alone and thoughtful. They didn't understand the full meaning of loneliness yet, but they could feel it in their hearts, just like they could feel when someone was happy or sad. Emma, the eldest by minutes, jumped up suddenly, her face brightening with an idea. "I know what we can do. We can write Daddy a note." "What kind of note?" Lily asked, tilting her head. "A note to tell him we love him," Emma said. "And maybe we can tell him that we think he's lonely so he knows we care." Sophie clapped her hands softly. "Yes, let's do it, but it has to be special. not like a boring homework note, something he will really feel in his heart. The girls ran to the little desk in the corner of the living room. It was their crafting station, filled with colored pencils, markers, glitter, and sheets of paper. The three of them crowded around, excitedly talking about what to write. Each girl had her own idea, but they agreed they wanted the note to be short, sweet, and full of love. Emma picked a bright pink sheet of paper. "I'll write, Daddy, we love you," she said, carefully forming each letter with a thick marker. Lily added, "And we can write, we think you're lonely sometimes. Don't be sad." Sophie smiled shyly and wrote a little drawing of their family holding hands, including a small heart above their heads. "This will show him we're thinking about him," she said proudly. When they were finished, the note looked simple but beautiful. It had bright letters, little hearts, and a family drawing that was all their own. They had folded it carefully, trying to make it neat, and placed it on a small table near the front door where they knew their father would see it first thing when he returned from the office. The girls were excited but also a little nervous. "Do you think Daddy will like it?" Lily asked. "I hope so," Emma said. "I just want him to smile and maybe hug us a lot," Sophie nodded. "And maybe then he won't feel lonely anymore." As the triplets finished their work, their mother, Mrs. Blake, entered the room. She had been busy in the kitchen preparing a light dinner for the girls and herself. Seeing the note on the table, she smiled softly, understanding immediately what her daughters had done. She knelt down and hugged the girls. "That's very sweet of you girls," she said warmly. "I'm sure your daddy will love it. You are reminding him that he's never really alone, not as long as you're thinking of him." The girls beamed at her words. "We just want him to be happy," Emma said. Mrs. Blake nodded, stroking Emma's hair. "I know. And sometimes, grown-ups forget that happiness can come from the simplest things. Your note might be just what he needs tonight." Later, the girls went through their bedtime routine, brushing their teeth, putting on pajamas, and reading little bedtime stories from their favorite books. But even as they settled into bed, they couldn't stop thinking about their father. They whispered to each other, imagining his reaction when he found their note. "I hope he smiles a lot," Sophie murmured. "And maybe he will come home and hug us first thing tomorrow," Lily added, her voice hopeful. Emma smiled sleepily. "Or even tonight, if he's not too tired from work." Meanwhile, back in the office, Jonathan Blake was still at his desk, unaware of the note waiting for him at home. The city outside had grown quieter as the night deepened, and the offices around him were mostly dark. He rubbed his eyes, thinking about the triplets for a moment. He wished he could see them more often, but the thought of leaving work unfinished made him uneasy. At the same time, something inside him stirred, a small, quiet hope he didn't fully understand. He realized that despite all the meetings, contracts, and late nights, what he truly wanted was simple: to connect with his daughters. The thought made his chest ache in a way that no achievement ever had. Unbeknownst to him, that simple desire was about to be met with an innocent act of love from three little girls. The note they had carefully prepared carried a message more powerful than any business memo or report. It spoke directly to his heart, the part of him that had been neglected for years, overshadowed by ambition and work. The next morning, when Jonathan finally returned home, he was exhausted and distracted, his mind filled with work matters. But as he stepped into the house, his eyes immediately caught the folded paper on the small table near the entrance. He picked it up, curious. The handwriting was colorful and playful, unmistakably his daughter's. He unfolded it slowly, seeing the bright letters, little hearts, and the tiny drawing of their family. His eyes softened as he read, "Daddy, we think you're lonely. We love you. Love, Emma, Lily, and Sophie." For the first time in years, Jonathan felt tears welling up in his eyes. The simple note, written with pure love and innocence, struck him deeply. He felt a mixture of surprise, joy, and a profound sense of guilt for all the moments he had missed. His daughters, in their own small way, had reminded him of what truly mattered. He sank into a chair nearby, holding the note close. He could hear the faint sounds of the girls playing upstairs, their laughter echoing through the halls. It was a sound that brought warmth to his heart, a sound he had not realized he had been missing so much. Jonathan stayed there for a long time, reading and rereading the note, reflecting on the message it carried. He realized that the triplets, despite being young, had understood something very important, that love and connection were what made life meaningful. They had noticed his loneliness, and instead of ignoring it, they had reached out in the simplest yet most powerful way possible. At that moment, Jonathan made a quiet promise to himself. He would try to be there for his daughters more, to spend time with them, to listen, laugh, and play. The note had opened his heart in a way that no achievement or success ever could. That evening, the girls finally went to bed, unaware of how deeply their note had touched their father. But Jonathan knew, in that quiet moment of reflection, that their small act of love had changed something inside him forever. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, not in business but in family. The next morning, the house was filled with a new kind of energy. Jonathan Blake, the busy CEO who had once felt so lonely, was determined to make time for his daughters. He wanted to be more than just a provider. He wanted to be a father who was present, loving, and part of the everyday joys of their lives. The triplets, oblivious to the full impact of their gesture, continued to play, laugh, and dream. But somewhere deep inside, they knew that their father had felt their love. And in that quiet understanding, a bond stronger than ever began to grow, a bond that would carry them through the coming holidays and many years beyond. Maria, the family's longtime nurse, had always been more than just someone who checked blood pressure or reminded Jonathan to take his medicine. She had watched over the family for years, quietly noticing the small details others often missed. She had seen the triplets grow from tiny babies into bright, energetic 7-year-olds, and she had always admired the bond they shared with each other. But she had also noticed something else, something that tugged at her heart: Jonathan's loneliness. It wasn't something she could solve with a prescription or a routine checkup. No, this was deeper than physical health. Maria could see it in the way Jonathan lingered in his office long after everyone else had gone home, the way he sat staring out the window at night, and the rare, fleeting moments when he looked at his daughters with longing but quickly hid it behind a tired smile. She knew he loved his children deeply, but she also knew that love alone could not fill the emptiness that had built up over the years. That evening, as she tidied up the kitchen after helping the girls with their bedtime snack, Maria thought about the note the triplets had left for Jonathan the night before. She had seen the girls carefully crafting it, giggling and whispering about what to write. Maria had smiled softly at their innocence, knowing that their small act of love carried more power than any grand gesture. Maria understood something important. Jonathan needed more than just reminders and messages. He needed to feel the warmth of connection, the joy of simple moments, and the magic of family during the holiday season. She knew that work and business achievements could never replace those experiences. And so, an idea began to take shape in her mind. A plan to bring a little bit of Christmas magic directly to the CEO, who had so much yet felt so empty. The next morning, Maria went to the store and carefully selected small decorations: twinkling fairy lights, a tiny tabletop Christmas tree, colorful ornaments, and a few little gifts for the girls. She picked up homemade cookies and a thermos of hot chocolate, thinking about how comforting those small things could be when shared with someone feeling lonely. She even found a few holiday-themed storybooks that she knew the triplets would enjoy. Later that day, when Jonathan was occupied with meetings and phone calls, Maria quietly entered his office carrying her bundle of holiday cheer. She set up the small tree on a side table, hung the lights, and placed the ornaments carefully. Then she arranged the cookies and hot chocolate on the desk and placed the storybooks nearby. The office, which had always felt cold and impersonal, suddenly began to feel warmer and more inviting. Jonathan's assistant peeked in briefly, surprised to see Maria arranging decorations in the middle of a busy workday. "What are you doing?" she asked, curious. Maria smiled softly. "Just bringing a little Christmas cheer to the boss. I think he needs it more than anyone else this year." The assistant raised her eyebrows but said nothing more, quietly admiring Maria's determination. She had seen the effect Maria had on the family over the years and knew that whatever she was planning would be meaningful. As the afternoon passed, Maria stepped back to look at her work. The once cold, lonely office now had a small corner that glowed with warmth and holiday spirit. She imagined Jonathan walking in after a long day, noticing the decorations, tasting the cookies, and perhaps even laughing for the first time in weeks. She thought about the note from the triplets and knew that this simple gesture could help bridge the gap between his busy, lonely life and the happiness waiting for him at home. When Jonathan returned from his meetings, he was tired and distracted, as usual. He barely noticed the decorations at first, focusing instead on the stack of documents he had to review. But as he walked further into the office, he caught sight of the small tree with its twinkling lights, the cookies arranged neatly on a plate, and the colorful storybooks stacked beside it. He paused, blinking in surprise. "Maria, what is all this?" he asked, genuinely curious. Maria turned to him with a kind smile. "It's Christmas, sir," she said softly. "I thought it might be nice to bring a little holiday spirit to your office. You've been working so hard, and I thought, maybe this could remind you that life isn't only about work." Jonathan looked around the room, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. He had never been the type to indulge in such displays, but the warmth in the room, combined with the thoughtfulness behind it, touched him deeply. For a moment, he forgot about deadlines, meetings, and the weight of his responsibilities. He simply stood there, taking in the small, thoughtful details Maria had arranged. The cookies smelled delicious. The lights cast a soft glow across the room, and the storybooks reminded him of his daughters and the small joys he often missed. He reached for one of the books and ran his fingers over the cover, smiling faintly as he imagined reading it to Emma, Lily, and Sophie. Maria noticed the softening of his expression and knew that her efforts had worked. "Sir," she said gently, "sometimes the smallest things can make the biggest difference. And you don't have to wait until the holidays to feel happy. You have your daughters. You have family. Let them in, even in small ways. It will change everything." Jonathan nodded quietly, absorbing her words. He felt a lump in his throat as he realized just how much he had neglected the simple pleasures in life. For years, he had been so focused on success, achievement, and building his company that he had almost forgotten the people who truly mattered. The triplets' note from the previous night suddenly came back to him, the bright letters, the little hearts, and the drawing of their family holding hands. He felt a wave of emotion rise within him. "Maria," he whispered, his voice catching slightly. "Thank you. I think I really needed this more than I realized." Maria smiled warmly. "I'm glad, sir. Sometimes we all need a reminder that we're not alone. And your daughters, they love you more than you know. They just want you to feel it too." At that moment, Jonathan felt a shift inside him. The loneliness that had weighed so heavily on his heart seemed a little lighter, replaced by a sense of hope and connection. He realized that happiness wasn't something he could chase through work or wealth. It was something he could create with the people he loved. Just then, the sound of little feet running up the stairs caught his attention. The triplets had finished their homework and were excitedly making their way to their father's office. Jonathan's heart leapt. He set down the storybook, wiped his eyes, and straightened his posture, preparing to greet them. The girls burst into the room, eyes wide with excitement and curiosity. "Daddy!" they shouted in unison, rushing toward him. Jonathan knelt down, opening his arms wide. "Hello, my little girls," he said, his voice full of warmth and emotion. Look at all of this. Did Maria do all of this for us? The triplets giggled and nodded, their eyes sparkling. Yes, Emma exclaimed. We wanted Christmas to come to Daddy too, Lily added, and we wrote you a note, Daddy. Did you see it? Jonathan reached for the folded paper on the desk, his hands trembling slightly. He unfolded it carefully, reading the words he had seen the night before. Tears filled his eyes once more as he looked at the colorful letters and drawings. He hugged the girls tightly, feeling a joy he hadn't felt in years. You three, you have no idea how much this means to me, he whispered. Thank you for reminding me what's really important. Sophie smiled softly and held his hand. We just want you to be happy, Daddy. Jonathan kissed the tops of their heads, overwhelmed by the love in the room. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly connected, not to his work, not to his wealth, but to his family. The office, once cold and lonely, was now filled with laughter, warmth, and the spirit of Christmas. Maria watched quietly from the corner, a satisfied smile on her face. Her small act of kindness, combined with the love of the triplets, had created a moment of pure joy and connection. She knew that this was only the beginning, that the bond between Jonathan and his daughters would grow stronger each day, filled with shared laughter, stories, and love. Jonathan finally sat down, holding the girls close. You've given me the best Christmas gift I could ever imagine, he said softly. Not the tree, not the cookies, not even the decorations, but all of you. Thank you. The triplets snuggled into his arms, giggling and whispering little secrets. The room smelled of cookies and pine, twinkling lights casting soft shadows on the walls, and the sound of laughter filled every corner. Jonathan realized that happiness, warmth, and love had arrived, not through money or success, but through the simple, heartfelt gestures of those who truly cared. And in that moment, he knew that this Christmas would be remembered forever, not for presents or fancy decorations, but for the love, family, and the gentle reminder that no one is ever truly alone when they are loved. Jonathan Blake sat in his office, holding the triplets in his arms, and for the first time in years, he felt a deep sense of peace. The twinkling lights of the tiny Christmas tree reflected softly in his eyes, the aroma of cookies filled the room, and the quiet sound of their laughter created a warmth he had almost forgotten existed. It was as if, in one simple evening, the emptiness that had weighed on his heart for so long had begun to dissolve. The girls giggled as they pointed at the decorations. Daddy, look at the sparkly star, Emma exclaimed, tugging at his sleeve. Lily bounced on her toes. Can we hang more ornaments tomorrow? Pretty please. Sophie, quieter than her sisters but equally enthusiastic, leaned against his chest. And can we read a story before bed, Daddy? With the lights on. Jonathan smiled, feeling a swell of emotion. He had always been so busy that he had missed countless moments like these, small joys that, in hindsight, mattered far more than meetings or contracts. He realized now that happiness could be simple. It could be found in laughter, in hugs, and in the shared wonder of children seeing the world with innocent eyes. Of course, he said gently. We can hang ornaments and read stories every night if you want. We'll make our own Christmas magic together. The girls clapped their hands in delight, squealing with excitement. Maria, standing quietly to the side, smiled softly. She could see the transformation taking place in Jonathan, the way his shoulders seemed to relax, the way his eyes sparkled with warmth instead of fatigue. It was a subtle change, but it was there and it spoke volumes. Jonathan stood and moved closer to the desk where the hot chocolate and cookies were arranged. He poured 3 small cups, careful not to spill, and handed one to each girl. Here, he said with a smile. A little treat for my little helpers. The triplets sipped the warm drink happily, giggling when the chocolate touched their lips. Jonathan joined them with his own cup, savoring the sweetness and warmth. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to simply enjoy the moment. No thoughts of work, no worries about deadlines, just him and his daughters, sharing a quiet evening together. As they enjoyed the treats, Emma leaned her head on Jonathan's shoulder. "Daddy, do you feel lonely now?" she asked softly. Jonathan's heart tightened. He thought back to all the nights he had spent alone, wishing he could be present with them. "I felt lonely for a long time," he admitted, "but not anymore. You girls and Maria, you've reminded me what really matters. I'm not lonely when I'm with you." Lily reached up and held his hand. "We love you, Daddy, and we don't want you to be sad." Sophie added quietly, "We just want you to be happy with us." Jonathan felt tears welling up, but this time they were tears of joy rather than sorrow. He hugged the girls tightly, feeling their warmth and love wrap around him like a soft blanket. It was a moment of connection so powerful that it seemed to wash away years of distance and neglect. Maria gently cleared her throat. "Sir," she said softly, "sometimes the smallest gestures, like a note or a few lights, can create the biggest change. You've already taken the first step by opening your heart to your daughters." Jonathan nodded, understanding her words fully. He realized that happiness wasn't something to be chased through work, money, or recognition. It was something to be embraced in the moment, shared with loved ones, and nurtured through simple acts of care and attention. The triplets, sensing that this was a special moment, began to talk about their favorite holiday memories. "Remember last year, Daddy, when we baked cookies and made a mess in the kitchen?" Emma giggled. "And we tried to decorate the tree by ourselves," Lily added, laughing. "It fell over," Sophie smiled shyly. "But we had so much fun. Can we do that again this year?" Jonathan laughed, a genuine, heartfelt laugh that had been rare in recent years. "Absolutely," he said. "We'll make new memories better than ever, and this time I promise I'll be there with you for every step." As the evening went on, Jonathan suggested they do a little activity together. He pulled out some craft supplies Maria had brought earlier and helped the girls make small paper ornaments for the tree. They cut, colored, and decorated with glitter and stickers, laughing as Jonathan attempted to follow their instructions. He was messy and clumsy with the scissors, but the girls didn't care. They loved having him involved. Maria watched quietly, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. She knew that these small moments, shared laughter and creative play would strengthen the bond between Jonathan and his daughters. And she knew that the joy they felt tonight would stay with them for years, forming the foundation of cherished family memories. After the crafting session, Jonathan called the girls to sit on the couch. He pulled them close and began reading one of the storybooks aloud, using different voices for each character, making them giggle uncontrollably. He paused often to ask questions, encouraging the girls to guess what might happen next. The room was filled with warmth, laughter, and the kind of simple happiness that money could never buy. As the night grew later, Jonathan realized how much he had missed being part of their lives. He remembered the countless evenings he had spent alone in his office, working late while the girls were tucked in bed. He felt a pang of regret but also a sense of hope. Tonight had shown him that it was never too late to reconnect, to be present, and to create meaningful memories. Finally, it was time for the triplets to go to bed. Jonathan carried them one by one to their bedrooms, tucking them in with gentle kisses and whispered words of love. "Sleep well, my little angels," he said softly. "Remember, I love you, and I'll always be here for you." The girls drifted off to sleep with smiles on their faces, feeling secure and loved. Jonathan stood in the doorway for a moment, watching them, and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He realized that the true meaning of Christmas wasn't about gifts, decorations, or even cookies. It was about love, connection, and being present with the people who mattered most. Returning to the living room, Jonathan found Maria cleaning up the few remaining items from their evening of celebration. He walked over to her, a grateful smile on his face. "Maria," he said quietly, "thank you. Tonight you've done more than I can ever explain. You've reminded me what family really means." Maria smiled softly, her eyes warm. I'm glad, sir, but it was your daughters who gave you the greatest gift. You just needed a little help noticing it. Jonathan nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. For the first time in years, he felt fully aware of the love that surrounded him, the bond with his daughters, and the happiness that came from being truly present. That night, as Jonathan finally sat alone in his office for a brief moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The office, once a place of cold solitude, now felt warm, alive, and filled with memories of laughter and love. He realized that he no longer needed to chase success to feel complete. He had everything he truly wanted right here: his daughters, his family, and the joy of simple, meaningful moments. He glanced at the small tree, the sparkling lights, and the little handmade ornaments the girls had made. He thought about the note they had left for him and smiled. That note, innocent and heartfelt, had sparked a change that no amount of business deals or achievements could have done. It had reminded him of what was most important, and it had opened his heart to the love he had been missing for so long. Jonathan Blake, the busy CEO who had once felt so lonely, had now experienced something far more valuable than success or wealth: connection, warmth, and the enduring love of his daughters. And as he finally turned off the lights, feeling the quiet contentment of the evening, he knew that this Christmas, and all the ones to come, would be filled with laughter, love, and memories that would last a lifetime. The next morning, Jonathan Blake woke up feeling different. For the first time in years, he did not rush out of bed to check emails, attend meetings, or review reports. Instead, he lay there for a few moments, listening to the faint sounds of his daughters laughing and playing in the living room. It was a sound that made his heart swell with joy. He realized that the small gestures from the previous evening, the note, the decorations, the cookies, and the stories, had sparked something powerful inside him. Jonathan stretched, feeling a lightness he had not felt in a long time. He thought about the past years, the nights spent alone in his office, and the moments he had missed with Emma, Lily, and Sophie. He felt a quiet regret, but it was accompanied by hope. He knew he could change. He could be present, he could laugh, he could create memories with his daughters that would last a lifetime. Downstairs, the girls were busy with their morning routine. Emma was carefully arranging the small ornaments on the tiny tree they had started decorating the night before. Lily was humming a cheerful tune, while helping Sophie unwrap a small present Maria had left for them. The house smelled of pancakes cooking in the kitchen, and the sunlight streaming through the windows added a soft, warm glow. Jonathan stepped into the living room quietly, watching his daughters for a moment. They were so full of life, so innocent, so eager to share their love with him. He felt a rush of emotion and knelt down, opening his arms. "Good morning, my little angels," he said softly. The girls ran to him, hugging him tightly. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes, Daddy," Emma exclaimed, her face lighting up. "And we can decorate the tree more today," Lily added. "We can make the whole living room sparkle like Christmas." Sophie smiled shyly. "And maybe we can read another story tonight, Daddy." Jonathan laughed, a warm, deep laugh that came straight from his heart. "Absolutely. Today, we'll make our own Christmas wonderland right here at home." After breakfast, Jonathan decided to spend the entire day with the girls. He had canceled his morning meetings and even called a few employees to postpone calls. For once, work was not the priority. Today, the priority was love, family, and connection. They spent the morning decorating the living room. Jonathan helped the girls hang ornaments, untangle strings of lights, and arrange decorations on shelves and tables. It was messy, chaotic, and loud, but Jonathan found himself laughing constantly. He realized that this was the kind of joy he had been missing all these years, the unplanned, imperfect moments filled with love and laughter. Maria quietly observed from the kitchen, occasionally offering advice on decorations or handing them supplies. She smiled to herself, knowing that these moments would leave a lasting impression on Jonathan. He was learning that happiness did not have to be earned through work. It could be created through love and shared experiences. By midday, the living room looked magical. The lights twinkled, ornaments sparkled, and the small tree stood proudly in the corner, adorned with handmade creations and shimmering decorations. Jonathan sat back for a moment, watching the girls admire their work. They looked at him expectantly, hoping for his approval. "This is perfect," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I've never seen anything more beautiful. Thank you, my little helpers." Emma and Lily squealed with delight, and Sophie clapped her hands quietly, a shy smile on her face. Jonathan realized that this was more than just decorating a tree. It was about creating memories, showing love, and being present in the lives of his daughters. After decorating, they sat together to read stories. Jonathan took turns reading in funny voices, asking questions, and encouraging the girls to act out parts of the story. The room was filled with laughter and chatter, and Jonathan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He realized that this was the kind of presence his daughters needed, someone who listened, played, and shared life with them. Later in the afternoon, Maria suggested a small surprise, a hot chocolate picnic in front of the fireplace. Jonathan agreed immediately. They spread a soft blanket on the floor, poured steaming cups of cocoa, and shared cookies while telling stories and sharing memories. The girls talked about their favorite moments, and Jonathan listened intently, feeling grateful for the chance to be part of their lives in a meaningful way. As the evening approached, Jonathan noticed a subtle change within himself. He felt lighter, happier, and more connected. He realized that the loneliness he had carried for so long had begun to fade, replaced by warmth, laughter, and love. He looked at his daughters, their bright eyes and joyful smiles reflecting back at him, and understood that the greatest gift he could give himself was presence, being there for them, fully and wholeheartedly. When bedtime arrived, Jonathan carried each of the girls to their rooms, tucking them in with gentle kisses and whispered words of love. "Sleep well, my little stars," he said. "Remember, I love you more than anything in the world, and I will always be here for you." After the girls were asleep, Jonathan sat in the living room, gazing at the lights and decorations. Maria joined him quietly, holding a cup of tea. "They've brought out the best in you, sir," she said softly, "and you've done the same for them. This is what family is about, being present, showing love, and creating memories that last forever." Jonathan nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. "You're right, Maria. I've spent so many years chasing success and ignoring what truly matters, but now I understand. Love and connection, that's the real success." Maria smiled, knowing that the lesson had been learned not through words, but through experience. Jonathan had witnessed the joy his daughters could bring into his life, and he had allowed himself to embrace it fully. In the days that followed, Jonathan made a conscious effort to change his priorities. He set aside time each day to play with the girls, read stories, and be part of their lives. Work was still important, but it no longer consumed him entirely. He realized that true fulfillment came not from achievement alone, but from the moments he shared with his family. The note from the triplets, the decorations Maria had brought, and the shared experiences of that first magical evening became the foundation of a new tradition. Every year they celebrated Christmas together in their own way, decorating, baking, reading stories, and simply enjoying each other's company. It was a tradition rooted not in material gifts, but in love, connection, and the joy of family. Jonathan often reflected on how a simple note from his daughters had changed everything. It had reminded him of the importance of noticing the little things, embracing love, and being present. He realized that children often teach the greatest lessons, and his triplets had taught him about kindness, empathy, and the power of small gestures. Years later, whenever Jonathan looked back at that first Christmas after the note, he smiled. It had been a turning point, a moment when he chose love over loneliness, connection over isolation, and family over endless work. The change had transformed not only his relationship with his daughters, but also his own understanding of life. Jonathan Blake, once a lonely CEO, had become a devoted father, present in every laugh, hug, and shared story. He had learned that success without love was incomplete, and that happiness was something to be shared, nurtured, and celebrated every day. And as he watched his daughters grow, he knew that the bond they had created that Christmas, and strengthened in the days, months, and years that followed, would last a lifetime. The house, once quiet and empty during holidays, was now filled with laughter, warmth, and love. Every corner reflected memories they had made together, handmade decorations, storybooks stacked neatly, and cookies waiting for shared enjoyment. The spirit of that first Christmas had become a lasting part of their family, a reminder that even the smallest acts of love can create the greatest happiness. Jonathan often thanked Maria for her quiet wisdom, her thoughtfulness, and her ability to see what he could not. She had helped bring the magic into their lives, but it was the love of his daughters that had truly changed him. Together, they had built a family filled with joy, warmth, and the knowledge that no one, no matter how busy or successful, should ever feel lonely when love is near. And so, year after year, the Blake family celebrated Christmas in their own special way, remembering the night a simple note, a few lights, and the love of three little girls had transformed a lonely heart into one overflowing with joy. The lessons learned that first holiday season, about love, presence, and connection, stayed with Jonathan forever, shaping him into a father who was always there, always loving, and always ready to create new memories with his daughters.